It was a Friday night, just past midnight, when I got the call that would change my life. I was a patrol officer with the Westfield Police Department. Nothing out of the ordinary ever happened. Most of my shifts were spent circling quiet neighborhoods and sipping lukewarm coffee. But tonight, something felt off. The dispatcher's voice came through the radio, slightly trembling. "Officer Matthews, we have a 10 to 74 on Maple Street. Requesting immediate backup." A 10 to 74 is code for a suspicious person. That alone didn't alarm me. We get those calls regularly. But the way she said it, the pause in her voice, the hint of fear, unsettled me. It wasn't normal. 10 to 4, I'm en route, I responded, trying to sound calm, though I felt a knot twist in my stomach. I didn't know what to expect when I arrived. I turned onto Maple Street, the streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement. It was eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that feels unnatural. There wasn't a single car parked along the curb, and no sounds of the usual late-night walkers or partygoers. Just dead silence. As I pulled up to the house in question, I saw the lights flicker in the window. Not the soft glow of a lamp or a TV, but something strange. It was almost erratic. I approached the door, my hand on my holstered weapon, trying to steady my breath. The front door creaked open before I could knock, and there stood a man. Tall, scruffy, wearing a torn flannel shirt. His eyes were wide, almost wild. "Please," he whispered, his voice shaking. "You need to help me. I didn't mean to do it." I felt a chill run down my spine. I tried to keep my voice steady. "What happened here, sir?" He stepped back into the house, leaving the door ajar. I followed cautiously, scanning the darkened interior. The smell hit me first. A mix of stale cigarettes, sweat, and something worse. The living room was a mess, but it wasn't the kind of mess you'd expect from a break-in or a robbery. There were things strewn everywhere. Broken glass, furniture overturned, pictures ripped off the walls. But then I saw it. In the far corner of the room, a woman was kneeling, her head bowed low. She was whispering something, her fingers twitching unnaturally at her sides. I couldn't make out the words, but there was a sharp sense of dread in the air. I stepped closer, my instincts screaming at me to get out. "Don't go near her," the man rasped, his voice low. She's not human anymore." His words didn't make sense. I was about to ask what he meant when the woman suddenly stood up, her head snapping around to face me. Her eyes were black, completely black. There was no white, no pupils, just void. And for a moment she smiled, but it wasn't a smile. It was a twisted, unnatural grimace that sent waves of terror through my chest. The man shrieked, "Get out! Get out now!" But it was too late. Something inside me told me I was already caught in something far darker than a simple disturbance call. And whatever this thing was, it was awake now. I didn't have time to think. Instinct took over. I turned and bolted for the door, hearing the man's desperate cries behind me. But before I could reach the threshold, the door slammed shut with an unnatural force. It rattled the frame, and I knew, deep down, that I wasn't just dealing with a regular criminal or a simple case of domestic disturbance. I tried to turn the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The door was locked from the inside, and there was no way out. I was trapped. From behind me, I heard the woman's footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing through the hallway. I whipped around, scanning the darkness for any sign of her. My flashlight's beam shook in my hand as it cut through the thick, suffocating darkness. Then I saw her again. Her face was pale, too pale, almost ghostly, with those black, empty eyes. Her skin was slick with some kind of substance I couldn't identify. She didn't move like a normal person. Her limbs jerked with an unsettling stiffness, like they were being controlled by something outside of her. She spoke. Her voice was low, guttural, like it was coming from the depths of a grave. "You shouldn't have come here," she hissed, each word dragging like nails on a chalkboard. I backed away, reaching for my radio. "Dispatch. This is Officer Matthews. I need immediate backup. There's something wrong here. I don't know what it is, but I need help." There was a long pause before the dispatcher responded, her voice crackling through the static. "Matthews, what's your location? I'm having trouble getting a signal." I felt a cold sweat forming on my brow. The signal was gone. The room seemed to close in on me, the air thick with something foul, something ancient. The woman lunged forward, her movements too quick for any human. She grabbed my wrist, her fingers impossibly strong, her nails digging into my skin. I tried to pull away, but it felt like I was stuck in place. Her grip was like iron. And then the whispers began. A voice inside my head, no voices. They were calling to me, murmuring incomprehensible things. I couldn't make out the words, but I felt their cold weight press against my mind, like they were trying to invade my thoughts. Her grin widened as she saw my panic. "You should have left when you had the chance," she said, her lips curling into that grotesque smile again. I pulled my taser from my belt, aiming for her chest. I pressed the button. The shock hit her, but instead of falling back in pain, she just absorbed it. Her body twitched once, then straightened, and the blackness in her eyes deepened. My heart raced. I realized my weapon wouldn't stop her. Nothing I had would. The sound of the front door splintering behind me made me turn. The man had somehow managed to force the door open, and he was running out, his eyes wide with terror. "Don't leave me," I shouted, but it was too late. He was gone, disappearing into the night like a phantom. The woman's head tilted, her eerie gaze locking onto me again. "You're not getting out," she whispered, her voice now crawling through the room, coming from every direction. I ran. I ran like I had never run before, not even thinking about where I was going. My only thought was survival. I didn't look back, but even as I tore through the dark hallways, I could feel her. I could feel her presence getting closer, just behind me. Every corner I turned, every door I opened, led me deeper into the house. I was getting lost, disoriented. I stumbled into what appeared to be a basement door. It was ajar. Desperation clawed at me. I grabbed the handle and swung it open, not caring what I might find. The basement was cold, colder than the rest of the house, and the air smelled like damp earth and rot. But I had no choice. I ran down the stairs, the floor creaking under my weight. There was a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling, swinging slightly as though someone had just passed underneath it. And that's when I saw it. On the far wall, there was a large old mirror. It was cracked in places, the glass fractured, but something stood in front of it. I froze. It was her, but not the woman from upstairs. This was something else, something worse. The reflection in the mirror wasn't just her. It was a distorted version of her, her features twisting and warping, as if she were being consumed by whatever was pulling her strings. And it was watching me. I turned, heart pounding, and heard the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming closer. The woman from upstairs was standing at the top of the stairs, her silhouette framed by the dim light from the basement. But it was already too late. The reflection was already reaching for me, its fingers crawling across the glass, trying to escape. I didn't have time to process what I was seeing. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like lead. That reflection, it wasn't just a mirror, it was a doorway, portal maybe. The longer I stared at it, the more I felt like it was pulling me in, calling me. I tried to turn away, but the air in the basement felt thick, like it was resisting me. My breath came in shallow gasps, and I could hear the footsteps of the woman getting closer, closer than before. I forced myself to look at the reflection again. I had to understand it. Why was it moving like that? The figure in the mirror was no longer just a reflection of her. It was mimicking my every move, stretching toward me with unnatural fluidity. I could almost feel its cold fingers grazing my skin. My hands trembled as I reached for my radio again, hoping against hope that I could get through to someone. "Dispatch, this is Officer Matthews. I need backup. No, I need someone to get me out of here." There was nothing but static. My heart sank. I could feel the presence of the woman in the basement doorway now, so close I could practically hear her breathing. And then it happened. The reflection in the mirror didn't just move anymore. It reached out. The distorted, twisted image of the woman reached through the glass, her arms stretching toward me like a nightmare. her fingers curling into claws. I stumbled back, hitting the cold concrete wall. I tried to move, to escape, but my feet felt stuck, like the floor itself was turning against me. I could hear the woman now, her voice singing from every corner of the room. "You're mine now," she whispered, and I swear I could feel her breath on my neck. I closed my eyes, desperately trying to shake off the panic, but when I opened them again, the woman was standing right in front of me. She was no longer just the sickly, twisted figure she had been upstairs. Her eyes were blacker than night, and her smile was wider, more jagged. Her skin was peeling in places, and I could see dark veins pulsing beneath the surface. Her voice, when it came, was no longer the soft whisper. It was a chorus of distorted sounds, overlapping, maddening. "You should have left. Now it's too late," she growled, her fingers curling around my throat, slowly tightening. I gasped, trying to free myself from her grasp, but it was like trying to fight against a vice. My vision blurred. Every breath felt like it might be my last. And then the world shifted. The basement seemed to stretch and contort. The walls wavered like I was underwater. The reflection in the mirror began to crack and splinter, pieces falling away, revealing something beneath it, something dark, like a void. I didn't know what was happening. All I knew was that something had changed. I wasn't in the basement anymore. I wasn't in that house. I was somewhere else, somewhere much worse. The woman's grip loosened, and her form flickered in and out of existence. She wasn't real anymore, not in any tangible sense. She was part of this thing that was pulling me into its grasp. My heart pounded as I tried to make sense of my surroundings. The air was heavy with a thick, oppressive darkness. And then I saw them. Thousands of them. They were everywhere, on the walls, in the shadows, staring at me. I couldn't see their faces, only the empty, hollow blackness of their gaze. But I could feel them, like they were watching me, waiting for something. I stumbled back, my mind unraveling. My training, everything I knew as an officer, didn't apply here. This wasn't a case of arresting someone or solving a crime. This was a different kind of horror, and I was trapped in it. I looked around frantically for an escape, but there was no door, no window, no way out. Just the endless stretch of darkness, and those eyes, those horrible, hollow eyes, following my every movement. And then I realized the truth. I wasn't just trapped here. I was a part of it now. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I heard a voice, my own voice, whispering, barely audible, like a warning. "This is what happens to those who stay too long. You can't leave. Not now. Not ever." The woman's voice was back, but it was different now. "You belong to us," she said, her voice a chorus of distorted whispers, echoing in the void. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The walls pressed in closer, and the eyes grew more intense. There was no escape. And then, in the distance, I saw something. A figure standing alone in the darkness. It was a man. I didn't recognize him, but I could feel his eyes on me too, as if he were waiting for something. I moved toward him, desperate. If there was anyone else here, maybe he could help. But as I got closer, I saw his face. It was the man from earlier, the one who had run out of the house. But he was no longer the same. His eyes were hollow, empty. His skin was pale, almost translucent. He didn't speak. He just reached out, his hand trembling as if he were begging me to understand. And then I saw the reflection of myself in his eyes. I wasn't me anymore. I was like them, like the woman. My face was twisted, my eyes black, my smile grotesque. I had become part of whatever this place was. And I knew, deep down, I would never leave. I was already lost. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the reflection in his eyes. I wasn't me anymore. I had become something else, something otherworldly, trapped in a place where reality was no longer a guarantee. There was no escape from the blackness. I could feel it seeping into my skin, into my bones, changing me, twisting me, until I no longer recognized the person I had been. The man's hand trembled as it reached toward me, as if he too were trying to escape whatever this place had become. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. The air was thick, smothering, as if the darkness itself was choking me. "Please, I tried to warn you," he whispered, his voice barely audible, lost in the suffocating silence. He stepped closer, his eyes vacant, his body limp as though he had already given up. What is this?" I finally managed to choke out. The words felt foreign in my mouth, like I wasn't even meant to speak anymore. He didn't answer. Instead, he motioned behind him with a broken gesture. I followed his gaze, but there was nothing there at first, just endless black. Then, slowly, the darkness began to shift, revealing shapes, fleeting images that seemed to blur in and out of existence. Faces, twisted, contorted faces, all staring at me with hollow, accusing eyes. They're all like us now," the man muttered, his voice quivering with despair. "They were trapped here, too. Like you, like me. We can't leave. Once you're in, it's over. There's no way back." I felt a chill grip my spine as realization hit me. This place, this thing I was in, wasn't just some twisted nightmare. It was real. The woman, the mirror, the eyes, they weren't illusions. They were all part of a force that had been here long before I ever arrived. It was alive, and it fed on us. Fed on our fear, our confusion, our desperation. "You'll see," the man said softly, his face crumbling into a grotesque smile. "You'll see soon enough. You'll see who they really are." I didn't want to know. I didn't want to understand what he meant. But my body betrayed me, couldn't look away. The images around us were growing stronger, more vivid. Faces from the past, people I had once known, others I had never seen before. They all blurred together in an endless nightmare. Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled. The faces in the darkness writhed and twisted, their expressions morphing into something darker, more terrifying. And then I heard it, a voice, a deep, guttural growl that vibrated through my chest. It wasn't a voice I recognized. It wasn't human. It was the voice of something ancient, something evil, something that had been waiting here in the shadows for far longer than I had been alive. "You have been chosen," the voice rumbled. I froze. The words echoed through the dark space, vibrating in my bones. The temperature in the room dropped. Felt like the darkness was swallowing me whole. "Chosen for what?" I gasped, my voice barely a whisper. "To become one of us," the voice replied. It wasn't just the man anymore. His lips didn't move, but I could hear the voice coming from everywhere, surrounding me, filling my mind. "To join the eternal hunger. You'll see the truth soon. The reflection doesn't lie." I glanced at the man. His eyes were no longer vacant. They were full of a dark, disturbing understanding. He had become part of it, willingly or not. He had accepted whatever this place wanted. And now it was my turn. A sharp, painful feeling shot through my chest, like my heart was being squeezed by invisible hands. I gasped for air, but there was none. The blackness pressed in tighter, smothering everything in its path. I fell to my knees, struggling to breathe, to fight back. But I couldn't. It was too strong. The force was too much. The reflection in the darkness started to move again, growing, shifting, distorting into something monstrous. It wasn't just a mirror anymore. It was a portal, a window to a world beyond our own. And I could feel it calling to me. The faces, the eyes, the voices, they all merged into one. They were all pulling me in. And then, as if on cue, the woman appeared again. But this time, she wasn't alone. There were others with her. Creatures, shadows with hollow eyes, their forms flickering and changing like they couldn't decide what they were. The woman stepped forward, her expression still twisted, but now there was something else in her eyes, something familiar. She smiled again. "Welcome," she said, her voice cold and final. "You've been chosen." And with that, everything went black. There was no sound, no light, just the suffocating darkness pressing in around me, pulling me into its depths. I fought to move, to scream, but nothing happened. The last thing I remember is the echo of the woman's voice, softly whispering in my ear, "Now you're one of us." And then I vanished, I don't know if I'm still alive. I don't know if this is just another nightmare or if I've truly crossed into whatever dark dimension this place is. But one thing is certain. I'll never leave. Not unless they want me to. And I hope you're reading this, because if you ever find yourself on Maple Street, in that house with the door locked shut and the woman waiting inside, remember my words. You're not just trapped. You're chosen. And once they have you, there's no going back. I woke up, but it wasn't like any waking I had ever experienced. My eyes opened, but I couldn't move, couldn't speak. My body felt numb, as if I was still drifting through that dark void. I could sense everything around me, but none of it felt real. My thoughts were sluggish, fragmented, like I was floating between worlds, unable to anchor myself to anything. Then the pain hit. It was sharp, searing, like every inch of my skin was on fire. I gasped, but no breath came out. I tried to scream, but nothing. I could feel the air around me. It was cold, stale, suffocating. It was the same feeling I had when I first entered the house on Maple Street. The same cold grip of dread. Suddenly, I heard a voice, a low, familiar whisper that sent chills down my spine. "Welcome back," it crooned, its tone mocking. "You thought you could escape, but you're still here. You belong to us." I blinked hard, forcing my mind to focus. And that's when I saw her, the woman, the same one from before. Her form flickered in and out of existence, like a bad signal. Her face warped with a smile that was more horror than welcome. She stepped closer, her eyes, those black, soulless eyes, locked onto mine. And this time it wasn't just her. There were others. Shadows, figures, faces twisted in ways that didn't make sense. They were all there, standing around me, watching, waiting. "You thought you were different," she said, her voice soft but sharp. "But you're just like all the others." My heart pounded in my chest, but I still couldn't move, couldn't fight. I tried to take a deep breath, but my lungs wouldn't obey. I was completely paralyzed, trapped inside my own body, while they circled me like predators, eyes gleaming with the promise of something awful. The woman reached out a hand, and before I could register what was happening, her fingers were on my skin, cold, icy cold, creeping down my arm, sending a jolt of electricity through me. I could feel her touch pulling something from me, draining me of everything that made me human. "You're not human anymore," she whispered, her voice no longer just hers but the voices of others, distorted, overlapping, as if I was hearing every soul that had ever been claimed by this place. Suddenly, my body jerked. My limbs moved against my will, as if they were being controlled by invisible strings. I couldn't stop it, couldn't break free. I was being forced to stand, forced to face the horrors around me. And that's when I understood. I wasn't just trapped in a place. I wasn't just in a nightmare. I was part of it, part of the reflection, part of whatever cursed this house, this world, this thing that had taken everything I was and turned it into a hollow, empty shell. "They'll see you now," she said with a twisted smile. "Your new family, your new home." I felt a pull, a magnetic force tugging at me. I was no longer in control. It didn't matter what I wanted, what I tried to fight. This place had taken me. And I was no longer a police officer, no longer a man. I was one of them now, a part of the darkness. The walls around me began to shimmer and shift, twisting into something far worse. The figures around me, people, creatures, began to take shape. I could see their faces now, horrible, contorted, stretched beyond recognition. Some had eyes like the woman, black and empty, while others had no eyes at all, just smooth, pale skin. But there was one thing they all had in common. They were waiting for me. "They're all here," the woman whispered, stepping back. "They were all once like you. They couldn't resist. You won't either." I tried to scream, but my voice was swallowed by the darkness. I didn't know what was worse. The pain of knowing I couldn't escape, or the horrifying realization that I never would. There was no going back. I was just another reflection now. Just another twisted soul trapped in the void. And then, as if all of it were part of some macabre ritual, everything went silent. The room froze, the air thick with a heavy, suffocating silence. But there, in the farthest corner, I saw something that sent a new wave of terror through me. A mirror, a large one cracked down the middle, and in that reflection I saw myself. Not the broken man I had become, not the soulless thing I now was, but a glimpse of the man I used to be, the officer, the person who had walked through that door all those nights ago. But there was something wrong. His face was twisted in a scream, his eyes pleading, begging me to understand. Then, a voice filled my mind, a cold, distant voice, like the whisper of a soul long lost. "Don't look at the reflection," it warned. "It shows you what you truly are, what they made you." I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. The mirror called to me, drawing me in like a moth to a flame. And that's when I saw it. In the reflection, I was no longer standing. I was kneeling, my body bent in reverence to the darkness, to the thing that had consumed me. The twisted figures behind me were no longer just watching. They were joining me, bowing to the same dark force that now controlled us all. And I knew then there was no escape. Not for me, not for anyone who came into that house. Not for anyone who looked into that mirror. We were all part of it now. We were all chosen. And we would never leave. I don't know if anyone will ever read this, but if you do, listen to me. There are places you should never go. There are things you should never disturb. Because once it has you, once you've crossed that line, there's no going back. If you find yourself on Maple Street, standing in front of that house, just turn around. Don't even think about it. Walk away. Because once you've looked inside, you're already gone. It's been weeks, or maybe it's been days. Time has no meaning anymore. It's all become a blur. The darkness is here, always surrounding me, suffocating every thought, every movement. And the worst part? I can't remember the last time I truly felt alive. It's like I'm fading, like I've already become part of whatever this place is. The woman, the shadows, the reflections, they haunt me, even when I'm not looking. They whisper, they move in the corners of my mind. Every time I close my eyes, I see their faces, twisted, empty, hungry. I remember the day I first felt the pull. It wasn't like anything I've ever experienced before. It wasn't physical. It wasn't a sound or a voice. It was a presence, a force, pressing against my soul, trying to draw me deeper. I don't know what it wanted, but I felt it. I felt the need to give in, to surrender. Every fiber of my being was screaming to break free. But that pull, it was so much stronger. The others who were trapped here, the ones who had come before me, they watch. They watch and they wait. They don't speak. They don't move. But their eyes, they're always there, always watching me. And sometimes, in the stillness, I can hear them whispering to me. "You're like us now," they say. "You're one of us." I don't know if it's the darkness doing this to me, or if I've truly lost my mind. But one thing is certain. The longer I stay here, the less I remember. The less I am. The more I fade into this thing, this creature that wasn't human to begin with. There's no escape. I can't escape the house. I can't escape the reflection. I can't escape them. And the worst part is, they don't need to catch me anymore. They already have me. I saw the mirror again today. It wasn't where it was before, but somehow, I knew it was waiting for me. It's always waiting. I don't know how it moves or why, but I don't care anymore. I know what it shows now. It doesn't just show your face. It shows your soul. It shows what you've become, who you really are when you can no longer hide from the truth. The truth is that I'm no longer an officer. I'm not even a man. I'm something worse. I've become part of whatever it is that feeds on fear, on souls. The reflection is just a reminder of that, of everything I've lost. And every time I look, I see the darkness taking over, piece by piece. I used to be able to hear the sound of my own voice, but now, when I speak, it sounds hollow, like it's coming from someone else. And when I try to move, I feel slow, distant, like I'm watching myself from a place I can't reach. I tried to fight it. I tried so hard to escape, to run. But the thing about the reflection is that it's not just a mirror. It's a trap. Pulls you in piece by piece until you're no longer you. Until you've given everything away. and all that's left is the hollow shell that used to be human. I can feel them now, the others. They're inside me too. They're in my thoughts, in my blood. They're telling me that I belong to them. They're waiting for the others who will come after me. They're waiting for more souls to add to their collection. And now I know what it means to be chosen. It means you'll never leave. Not alive, not whole. You'll always be a part of this place. A part of the mirror. A part of the darkness that devours everything in its path. The house, the reflection, the whispers, they all feed on us and we feed on them. And once you're in, you're never coming out. If you're reading this, I have only one thing left to say: don't go to Maple Street. Don't go near the house with the broken door and the flickering lights. Because once you see the reflection, you won't be able to turn away. And once it has you, there's no escaping. You'll be just like me, just like the others, part of it, forever, and it will never let you go. Did you like these stories? Write in the comments. And please write what you didn't like. It will be useful for me to know your opinion. And I will improve my work. Thank you. Subscribe to my channel and click the bell so as not to miss new stories. I try for you.